Yo, what's good, man? Dry Head Lou, another reaction. I just put the captions on. Got a trapped in a narrow cave. The infamous death of Neil Morse. Last time I saw the Nutty Putty when I was crazy, they said dude got stuck upside down. Cause he had went into the wrong he went into the wrong spot. I would never do no cave exploring. I don't know how people like that. You about to see though.
John Jones. But what if I...
Oh, that's the one he was talking about right
So,
there?
we've all heard of the infamous death of John Jones. But what if I told you there was another one? It was very similar but happened way before, that often gets overlooked. On the 22nd of March, 1959, a group of 8 cavers arrived at Peak Cavern in the Peak District, with the goal of exploring a narrow shaft that had been discovered a few weeks prior. 20-year-old Neil Moss was first to volunteer to enter the shaft, but he would never resurface.
Wow.
After getting himself stuck deep underground, a race against time commenced to save him, with volunteers travelling all across the country to help out. But what happened to Neil that day? Let's talk about it. This is the infamous Peak Cavern caving
That's crazy. You gotta come all the way across the country. That's gonna take like a day or something, or I don't know.
disaster, the death of Neil Moss. With cyber threats, hackers, and data breaches on the rise, it has never been more crucial to use NordVPN. Protect your in chance of getting pop to run as fast. You'll get a 2-year 30. Obviously, this
There you go.
Thank you NordVPN for sponsoring this video. Obviously, this story is now very old, so there isn't much information available on Neil Moss. But we do know he was born on the 28th of July, 1938. His full name was Oscar Hackett Neil Moss, and at the time of the incident, he was 20 years old, studying philosophy at Balliol College.
Wait. What's his name? Wait. I just heard like 4 names, bro.
28th of July, 1938. His full name was Oscar Hackett Neil Moss.
How you got 4 names? Oscar Hackett Neil Moss? So Oscar his first name, Hackett his middle name, Neil his last name. Bro, how you got 4 names?
At the time of the incident, he was 20 years old, studying philosophy at Balliol College in Oxford. He was from a rather
He was 20
years old, studying
Wow.
philosophy at Balliol College in Oxford. He was from a rather well-off family, with his father being a British cotton executive. Neil had a love for all sports, but his main passion was exploring. This urge to explore led him to caving, which at the time was growing in popularity, massively thanks to the formation of caving clubs. During his freshman year, he joined the British Speleological Association, a caving group which was founded in 1935. If you didn't know, the BSA is most famous for discovering Lancaster Hole, one of Britain's longest and most complex caving systems. Neil was well liked within the club, and had been on a few different trips with them. He was a good caver, but I wouldn't exactly call him completely experienced. On the 22nd of March, 1959, Neil, along with 7 other cavers from the club, planned a day trip to Castleton, with the hopes of exploring Peak Cavern,
Right.
one of Britain's most infamous caves. Castleton in the Peak District is a charming English village nestled amidst the breathtaking beauty of the Derbyshire countryside. It's renowned for its picturesque setting, with rolling hills, limestone cliffs, and its vast system of caves. Fun fact, I grew up around half an hour from Castleton, so I've been many times. It's an amazing place, but I wouldn't recommend going on the weekend, as it gets rammed with tourists. Anyway, one of the most famous caves in Castleton is Peak Cavern, the largest caving system the Peak District has to offer. This natural limestone cave system is among Britain's most significant, with a number of chambers one can explore. Peak Cavern stands out from other caverns in Castleton, as it was shaped naturally, unlike those formed through mining. The cavern has a rich history. Once being inhabited by rope makers, who used the cave as their home. Today, guided tours can be taken to see the inside of the cave, and the entrance to the cave is used for village events and concerts, due to its remarkable acoustics. However,
That's type fire, I ain't gonna lie.
back in
But
the
going inside the cave, trying to go through those tight cracks, crawling through those tight cracks and holes and all that, they tripping.
1950s, it was a hotspot for caving groups looking to explore new systems, and on the 22nd of March, 1959, the group were ready to explore. That day, the cavers arrived at Peak Cavern with the intention of exploring a passage around half a mile from the cave entrance. According to reports, this passage had been discovered 2 weeks earlier, so cavers around the UK were eager to explore. They began and got to work. All 8 men crawled through narrow passages at a depth of around 1,000 feet underground. After an hour or so of crawling, they reached an opening. This was the opening to a large chamber which, at the time, was unnamed. The chamber has been described as magnificent, and the group stopped and stared in awe at its natural beauty.
Right.
After looking around the chamber, they found the narrow shaft that had been found 2 weeks earlier. It looked like a hole in the ground, with endless possibilities of where it could lead to. 4 of the cavers in the group were among the party that had discovered the shaft 2 weeks earlier. They were aware that the narrow shaft twisted and posed a challenge. They had also calculated that the shaft's depth was...
Look at that. That's just crazy. Like, mad narrow. Like, how you gonna get through that? Then they got that little curve right there.
40 feet. They decided to lower a 75-foot ladder down the hole, just in case the shaft extended further, and then it was time for one of them to go down. But who would it be? Although Neil was 6 foot tall, he was very slim, and bravely decided that he would be the first to descend the shaft. The shaft tilted off vertical for 12 feet, twisted tightly, inclined 10 feet, and then dropped vertically for 18 feet. He slowly and surely worked his way down the shaft, and when he was around 40 feet down, he noticed some small boulders blocking his way. This part of the shaft was very narrow, tight, and claustrophobic.
By that point, you should be like, alright, we gotta go back. I ain't about to try and risk it.
In order to kick the rocks, Neil had to move his body into an awkward position. When doing this, he accidentally jammed the ladder below him. He was now sandwiched between the shaft wall and the ladder.
Oof, like, oh my god, bro.
He was unable to move. He was stuck in the dark
Wait, what did he
and
say?
unable to free himself.
What happened to
After
him?
around 30, he was stuck in the dark and unable to ladder. This meant he was on the ladder below him. He was now sandwiched between the shaft wall and the ladder. This meant he was unable to move. He was stuck in the dark.
Wait, so the ladder, so it was so narrow that, like, the ladder took up mad of the space and he couldn't get back up? That's what he's saying? I didn't even hear what he...
Missed, kicked the rocks. Neil had to move his body into an awkward position. When doing this, he accidentally jammed the ladder below him. He was now sandwiched between the shaft wall and the ladder.
Wow.
This meant he was unable to move. He was stuck in the dark and unable to free himself.
So you telling me...
After around 30 minutes of struggle, Neil gave up on trying to free himself. He shouted up to the others, "I say I'm stuck. I can't budge an inch." He then asked the others to lift the ladder as he held on, which they did. They successfully moved him a few inches, but once again the ladder got jammed, and they had to try something else. There was no panic at this point. The cavers above began the standard rescue operation and lowered a rope into the shaft. In Neil's mind, he'd be free in no time. The group lowered the rope down, and Neil tied it around his body. The cavers then pulled the rope, but the shaft had sharp corners and snapped a few seconds later. They decided to try this again, and once more lowered a different rope down the shaft. They managed to pull Neil up around 2 feet before the rope snapped. Neil was still stuck. Now panicking, some of the cavers went to get help, and within hours, volunteers from all over England arrived at...
They said hour, bro was stuck down there for, like, stuck. That's why I be taught, like, they really be stuck for hours because people be having to come from mad far. That's crazy, like. I can't imagine that. Dude don't got no flashlight either, like, they mean he in the dirt. So he down there with nothing, just...
in hopes of freeing the trapped caver. Along with hundreds of volunteers, the RAF, police, and even the Navy showed up to help Neil, but a few hours after he became trapped, the rescuers were presented with another issue they hadn't even thought about.
Whoa.
Due to Neil being firmly stuck, the little air circulation there was completely cut off. This resulted in dangerous levels of carbon monoxide, which was from Neil's breath, and this would present as thick and foul-smelling air. Moss was now beginning to lose consciousness, even asking the rescuers at one point if they wanted to go out and eat. it was clear that they didn't have much time.
Wow.
Experienced cavers were sent down the shaft in hopes of reaching Neil Moss, but one by one they were driven back by the foul-smelling air, many of them even losing consciousness.
For real? Is that crazy? You don't get, he said, carbon monoxide from his breath. Damn, is that crazy?
One volunteer by the name of Ron Peters was able to reach Neil and tie a rope around him, but this stunted his breathing even more, so he had to retract the rope and go back. Oxygen tanks were sent to Castleton, and the doctor pumped oxygen down through a tube, but they were still unable to free him, and time was running out. Rescuers were desperate to reach Neil. The plan was, if anyone was able to reach him and withstand the air, to break his collarbone so that he could be freed, but no one was able to. They even sent in one of England's most revered and experienced cavers, Bob Leakey, but he could not help. Sadly, during the morning of the second day, RAF Dr. John Carter, who was monitoring his breathing, pronounced Neil Moss as dead on the 24th of March, 1959. It was safe to say rescuers did all they could to save Neil Moss, and each and every
It's not even worth it, man. It's not worth it.
of them were absolutely gutted by the outcome, including Neil's father, who waited outside the cave throughout the rescue operation. It was him who made the decision that no one else should risk their lives to retrieve his body. He requested that they leave his body in place and seal the shaft, which they did with rocks. It was determined that Neil had died from carbon dioxide excess, which is when there is high levels of carbon dioxide in your blood. Despite heroic efforts in harsh conditions, accusations and counterclaims arose about poor organisation and incompetence in Neil's extraction. Media coverage turned negative on cavers and caving, sparking calls for it to be banned due to perceived...
Man, y'all cannot try and blame the people who rescued them for that happening, bro. Like, he chose to go down there. Like, he saw it was narrow and he wanted to risk it. Like, can't get mad at. They tried to say the dude, like, how you gonna get mad at them? And then they saying it's dangerous, like, for anybody else to go down there and try to get his body. So it's like
irresponsibility and danger. Obviously, this never came to fruition. The Neil Moss story is infamous in the Castleton area, and many still talk about it to this day. The unnamed chamber, from where the shaft originated from, was named Moss Chamber in honour of Neil, and an inscription was placed on the wall which is still there to this day. Although this was absolutely horrific, it is important to honour the rescuers who worked tirelessly to help Neil.
For real though, they came out from hours to try to help him, trying to help him for hours. What they were saying, the organization, like, you can't get mad at them. Can't.